Hey everybody, welcome and thank you for joining us. Another obscure Antietam place, at least, places people don't get out, let alone walk out into, and maybe we'll get into that a little bit later. You're with the American Battlefield Trust. That's Chris White behind the camera there. We got some other special guests. We're adding another guest that we haven't had on. It just, the dominoes keep falling in a good way. Indeed, with us we have more than a century and a half of people studying the Battle of Antietam. So we got some real deal people with us today, and we are on the scene of the final attack, what's often called that. Let me back up for a second. September 17th, 1862, I think you know, there's fighting in the cornfield, there's fighting in the West Woods, there's fighting around the Sunken Road. Most people don't know, there's fighting around the Middle Bridge. But around mid-morning, Union forces start to try to assault the Burnside Bridge at 10 o'clock, at noon, and at 1 o'clock, and around 1 o'clock. After all, or most of all, the other fighting has died down, you finally have the Union soldiers, Burnside soldiers, getting across Snavely's Ford and Burnside Bridge. And that's when the real fighting starts around here. That's the real message of this, is that what's about to ensue is a battle as costly almost as the first Battle of Bull Run, as the Battle of Kennesaw Mountain, just on this part of the battlefield, and this is after the fighting for Burnside Bridge. So this is some real deal fighting. To set it up here, Burnside has a few divisions with him. He actually has 4, but I think he only has 3 with him at this time, and they are going to array in this orientation more than a mile from here. Pickett's charge size, as I've heard Tom Clemens say, and they've got a mile-wide line, and they are going to do the final advance. They're going to cut the Confederates off from their routes of retreat, pin them against the Potomac, win the Battle of Antietam heartily, and who knows what comes next? No, because I think there's a little bit more to this story you've probably heard about. And to set this up, our good friend and co-founder of the American Battlefield Trust predecessor, and with the Save Historic Antietam Foundation, Dennis Frye.
Hey Gary, hey everybody, it's great to be with you again here at Antietam. We panned in a direction that is now looking south. So let me give you a quick orientation here. You see a mountain in the background. That mountain, many of you know, but you don't know it by name. It's referred to as Elk Ridge. And if you've been at Harper's Ferry, and you're Harper's Ferry and you're overlooking the Potomac River and you see that massive mountain with the mammoth cliffs that just have themselves completely managing that Harper's Ferry landscape. That's called Maryland Heights. That's the mountain that you see in the background that terminates at Harper's Ferry at Maryland Heights, the Elk Ridge. So why do I make a reference to Harper's Ferry? Well, because it's not far from here. It's very near here. In fact, we are closer to Harper's Ferry here than any place else on the battlefield. So Harper's Ferry south of us, not far. Again, why my emphasis on Harper's Ferry when we're standing here on September 17th at Antietam? Well, remember, 2 out of every 3 Confederates, 2/3 of Lee's army, is not here with him. They have been with Jackson, Stonewall Jackson, at Harper's Ferry, executing Special Orders 191, resulting in the capitulation of Harper's Ferry. So it finally surrenders on September 15th, 2 days ago. What that surrender does is it releases those Confederates under Jackson and allows them to come north. So on the 16th, Confederates have been marching from south to north, crossing the Potomac River only a few miles from here, near Shepherdstown. Thousands and thousands of Confederates coming north. Here we are now, afternoon of the 17th. Lee has deployed all the Confederates that have arrived. They're here, they have fought, and General Lee, right now, at this moment, on this section of the field, which would be his right, the Confederate right, is facing desperation, almost hopelessness. He's run out of men. That's the greatest fear of a general. You don't have enough resources to get the job done. And that's General Lee right now. He has run out of men to stop this advance that Garry just points out. Burnside now preparing to attack the Confederate right, and Lee doesn't have enough men to hold this position. So General Lee is looking the same direction that I'm pointing right now. He's looking south. He's looking towards Harper's Ferry because he knows there's still one final division that hasn't arrived on the field. At full strength, almost 6,000 men. Not going to be near that when it arrives here coming from Harper's Ferry. That long march, hard march, and crossing the river, much of it at a double quick, on a day that was dry and not real hot but humid, is going to take its toll. And so perhaps General Ambrose Powell Hill, AP Hill, that final division that has been at Harper's Ferry, on its way, leaving about 7:30 this morning, September 17th, 7:30 this morning. It's now about 2:30, 3 o'clock. They're going to be huffing and puffing. They're going to be soaked with sweat and covered with dust. And you now are expected to fight. Your day's just beginning after that long march. Believe me, you and me, after that long march, regardless of our physical condition, we would say, you want us to do what? You want us to fight after we got here? Well, now comes the hard part, and now comes the hardest work. And it's work that's so important that literally, and I'm not using hyperbole, the fate of the Army of Northern Virginia right here at this place, at this moment, is in the hands of the timely arrival of General A.P. Hill. And Lee knows it. If Hill doesn't make it in time and Burnside advances before Hill's arrival, Lee can't possibly hold Sharpsburg, and it could be disaster for the Confederate Army. Well, they're coming. They're coming from that direction. They're getting closer and closer. Lee knows it. And to tell you about what happens next, I turn it over to co-founder of the Save Historic Antietam Foundation and my dear friend, Tom Clemens.
Thank you, Dennis. And certainly this has got to be one of the most dramatic moments of September 17th, 1862, as Dennis has set it up. The 9th Corps attack is numerically probably the largest single attack the entire day of September 17th, 1862. Burnside's 4 divisions, his 2 leading divisions side by side with Rodman's division on the left and Wilcox's division on the right, are from essentially the other side of the ravine, almost to the Boonesboro Pike, down to this monument right here. As Dennis said, a mile-wide front of Union advance supported by Cox's Ohio brigades behind them. This is a huge assault. What's here to stop them? 3 tiny little brigades from David R. Jones's division, Kemper's Virginians, Jenkins, South Carolina, and what's left of Toombs' brigade, which were Georgians who had defended the bridge and have regrouped now to come back and oppose this attack. That's not many troops, maybe 2,000 at tops, to defend against 10,000 men marching. We need Hill. Can Hill get here in time? That's the big question. 2 things happen that are going to dramatically affect the outcome of this. First of all, A.P. Hill rides ahead of his division to report to Lee at Lee's headquarters west of town, about 3/4 of a mile diagonally in that direction, just west of the town of Sharpsburg. Lee tells Hill that he's going to want to move his troops to this part of the battlefield that Burnside's attack is building. He can see the troops moving in position, and clearly Burnside is going to launch an assault. But after talking with Lee, A.P. Hill runs into David R. Jones. Now, every Confederate troop that had crossed the Shepherdstown Ford up to this point had turned north upstream on the Potomac to the Boonesboro Turnpike and then come into the back of Sharpsburg. But David R. Jones tells Hill, push straight from the ford and you'll come right into the back of my position. A much shorter route. This is going to save the day. The other big thing is that Burnside's command is going to have some difficulties keeping alignment. We're standing here in about the left end of Burnside's attack. The right end is much farther advanced towards Sharpsburg, all the way up on the top of the hill, almost to the Harper's Ferry Road. But the left flank is lagging. And the monument over my shoulder here that you can see in the background is to one of those lagging regiments. This is the 16th Connecticut Infantry. They were mustered into the Federal service on August 28th of 1862. Got on a train and went to Washington, where they were issued arms and equipment and marched out with the 9th Corps to this place without ever having time to do any sort of drilling or learning how to be a soldier. They may have fired their muskets once before this battle. And so now the 8th Connecticut, which should have been on their right flank, is about 400 yards up the hill in front of them. The 16th Connecticut is laying down in the middle of a field. That field there was a cornfield, 40 acres. And you look at that terrain, and I've got to tell you, I admire a man that looks at a ground that slanted and says, I want to plow this with a horse-drawn plow and put 40 acres of corn in there. That's pretty incredible in itself. But these rookie soldiers are laying in that corn, bullets zipping through the corn over their heads, no idea what to do. General Rodman, the division commander, saw them lagging back, started to ride down here to bring them forward when he was mortally wounded and removed from the battlefield. And so these guys are on their own and wondering what their next move is. But they don't wonder very long, because the next move is made for them. A.P. Hill arrives. He arrives at the nick of time. He takes his 1st Brigade, Maxcy Gregg's South Carolinians, and they come down a ravine over here to the south, out of sight, and then turn and start marching northward and get practically perpendicular to the 16th Connecticut. Now, some of A.P. Hill's men may have helped themselves to some blue jackets while they were at Harper's Ferry for several days, but I think more important is that Gregg's South Carolinians are coming into the 16th Connecticut's position from exactly this way the 16th Connecticut got there. So these rookie soldiers look out and think, oh, this is more of our own men coming up. And it's not until Gregg stops his column about 75 yards from the flank of the 16th Connecticut and unleashes a volley that they realize that they're mistaken. And those that didn't fall down pretty much break for the rear. The colonel of the 16th was a U.S. Army regular. He knew what to do. He gives the command, change front forward on the 10th Company. He's going to wheel this regiment around to face this flanking fire. The 10th Company wheeling on a fixed pivot, the other 9 companies moving parallel on a moving pivot to line themselves up. He knows what to do. The problem is nobody in the 16th has heard that order before or has any idea how to execute it, even on a drill field, to say nothing of in a cornfield under fire. So you really have to sympathize with these poor rookie nutmegger soldiers from Connecticut who just break and run because they don't know what else to do. They can stand there and get shot down and killed. And in fact, we have been able to document that 2 of these fellows from Connecticut didn't stop running until they got to England. They literally went to Baltimore, got on a ship, and went to England and said, 3 weeks in the Army and I am done. So this was essentially a huge turning point, with Hill coming in on the flank, not only of the 16th Connecticut, but essentially the next brigade comes in under under Lawrence O'Brien Branch, takes the 7th and 37th North Carolina, lines them up again perpendicular to the Union line of advance, and is pushing them that way. And that means that every other regiment in this advance now has Confederates on their flank and rear, and they're going to have to fall back. So A.P. Hill has arrived with maybe 3,500 guys out of his division to confront 10,000 guys who are fighting probably about 1,800. But Hill has arrived exactly on time and exactly at the place where he is getting maximum benefit from these soldiers being on the flank and rear, and this brings Burnside's advance to a stall, and they fall back all the way to this ridge over here on the other side of the cornfield, where eventually the 2 lines will stabilize. The Union soldiers over there along the Sherrick fence, and the Confederates essentially in this area. And just behind us, if we turn around this way, you can see in the immediate rear, this is what we call mortuary cannon that marks where General Branch of North Carolina was killed. And of course the ground that these North Carolinians traversed. And so this is pretty much the ending of the Battle of Antietam. That by the time these 2 lines stabilize, the Union fall back and regroup, the Confederates come down here and occupy roughly this fence line. There was no road here in 1862. This is a Park Avenue to get you here. By that point, it's getting near dusk and the fighting is done for the day. So this is the climactic ending of a battle that has had nothing but a series of climactic back and forths since dawn, about 5:30 in the morning.
That's great, Tom. What a beautiful story. And you know, you can't write it any better than this. I mean, you know, all these people making up a lot of history. You don't need to. It's already written for you, if only you'll take the time to look at it. Beautifully told, Tom. You're with the American Battlefield Trust. We hope you'll not only share this with your friends, but you'll also go ahead and subscribe to this YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook as well. We could really use, we're trying to spread as much history as possible, and if you're watching, you probably like it. You probably have friends that do as well. Now, we got a couple more things we want to talk about, one of which is right behind me and an opportunity that might be coming up. But before we do that, I know our good friend Bryan Cheeseboro had a question for Dennis, I think.
Thanks, Gary. I'm back from my trip. Anyway, we're here on Branch Avenue, and I was just looking out on this gorgeous day, and I recall being here 20 years ago. I even brought my photo album to share some pictures with the crew here today. Anyway, I remember coming up this road and seeing the monuments and such. And then when I get up here to the 16th Connecticut Monument, which is just behind the cameraman here, looking at it and remembering that I made a point to get to all of the monuments on my trip. This is 20 years ago. But that one, being in the field right there, I was really not able to access it. Now, I understand, I guess, since then that there have been some paths or whatever that have been created, but I know that the Save Historic Antietam Foundation has been behind cutting some pathways to make greater access to the battlefield, and I really think that that's wonderful. So my question is, I wasn't able to access that years ago, but I wanted to ask Dennis Frye if anything is going to be done to give greater access to that 16th Connecticut monument. Great story, by the way, Tom telling. Dennis, if you could come on and we could talk for a minute.
So let's go back. So as you look out here over the 40-acre cornfield and you see the 16th Connecticut in the background, Brian's right. There's no access. You got a soybean field here. Oh, incidentally, during the Civil War, no farmer was growing soybeans in the Antietam Valley. This is a cash crop today, but soybeans, no, we would have corn here. So how do we get to it? This really deals with the evolution of the Antietam battlefield. When you were here 20 years ago, this was private property. So the Park Service eventually was able to acquire these properties. There were easements on this land. There were protective easements on the land, so the land couldn't be developed. But an easement does not get you access. It's still private property. It's not owned by the public. The public has simply purchased the development rights on that land. And so eventually the farmer retires and the farmer sells, and the farmer could sell to anyone. But the Park Service, the National Park Service, acquires this property, and boy, that's a big acquisition, because this is a huge hole here at Antietam where we don't have the opportunity to have public access and see this ground, walk this ground, and feel this ground. Right. And so when you were here, you didn't have that opportunity. Today, you can park at the Burnside Bridge. You can walk trails that take you all through Burnside's assault. And it's incomplete, however. It's incomplete because as we turn around, go back this way, here on the other side of Branch Avenue, all of that, also soybean field today, that's private property. Now, it's protected with the exception of a few of the houses you see up there on the rise, the top of the hill, which is where the Harpers Ferry Road is located. That's the Confederate position in this battle, much of the day. That ground's protected. It's under easement. Nobody can develop it, but you can't walk on it. It's not accessible, private property. So I know another future target for the National Park Service is this ground, so that we can complete this section of the battlefield, which would permit you to walk through many of these fields. I might add also that there's no parking at this end of the field, but we're working to change that. And I'll turn that over to my friend Tom Clemens to talk about a little teaser for you, a little teaser on what we might be able to do here.
Just a little bit, just to see what it's like.
Thank you, Gary and Dennis. Yes, Save Historic Antietam Foundation is very excited about an opportunity that came up this summer, and we've been able to take advantage of it. If you look over my shoulder, you can see a one-story house up on the crest of the hill there on the other side of the Harpers Ferry Road. The Park Service authorized boundary ends at Harpers Ferry Road, so that property on the other side is not and could never be part of the national park without a boundary expansion. But it's a very important ground. There were Confederate troops there. In fact, right where you see that house was where Richardson's 2nd Company of the Washington Artillery of New Orleans occupied their last position of the day. And right in front of them, Colonel James Lane of the 28th North Carolina had his troops in the road in front of the guns, laying down, supporting the battery to keep it from being attacked. And so it is very much a part of the battle. It's not part of the battlefield. But that house came up for sale this summer, and we wanted to move quickly. We have been essentially burned a couple times by not moving fast enough, and so we quickly jumped on the house and put it under contract. And then we called our good friends at the American Battlefield Trust to help us out with this. But essentially, we now have that half-acre property up there now in our possession. We've settled on it. And to the left of that house, you can see just a little bit of another structure next to it on a separate half-acre property.
That would be to the right for the viewer.
Sorry, you're right. To your right, my left, there is an abandoned house trailer up there. That's a separate lot, and we have purchased that property as well. So we have them both now essentially under contract, and all we have to do is pay for it, of course. But we're real excited about the possibilities that might happen with that property. It overlooks this whole final attack field and would be a wonderful place to interpret from. Right now, we're pulled over on the grass shoulder of the tour road, and if you notice any of the Park Service law enforcement guys going by, they're giving us the hairy eyeball because they don't like us pulling over on the grass. But this is the only place that you can get this view. So bringing that half-acre or those 2 half-acre lots together and bringing it into the Park Service would allow another tour stop to really tell you this story about the final attack, because there is no other place here on the battlefield tour route to tell this story. You either have to stop here in the middle of the pavement and impede traffic, or pull over on the grass. There's no interpretive signs. If you don't know what you're looking at, you don't know what happened here. We want to change that, and we see this property up here as the potential for telling a much more accurate story about this climactic end to this climactic battle.
And Tom said the word accurate, and that's what I want to make my final point. You see those houses up there. They're not part of the historic scene. They weren't here on September 17th, 1862. They're incongruous with this landscape. They're intrusions in the landscape. And so sometimes the best thing that we can do on a battlefield is remove things that have grown up on the battlefield, that weren't there, have no history, no integral part of the story. And so those structures that you see with your naked eye right now, that one house and that trailer beside it, when you come back to Antietam in the future, you won't see it, because Save Historic Antietam Foundation is going to demolish those structures, restore the landscape there, and open this up as soldiers would have seen it. And sometimes battlefield restoration is just as powerful as battlefield preservation.
Great, Dennis. I think we're going to probably wrap it up here, but I mean, you've heard David Duncan already say it a million times, this idea of battlefield preservation, good intentions are just that, money. The only way to protect pieces of battlefield land is to buy it or to buy interest in it. And that's it. And you've heard Tom and Dennis say that before as well. So to get at that final bit, you're gonna probably see a separate video just about that. I think we gave you a little bit more than a taste today, but there's even a little bit more, and we'll show you the land in better detail, and hopefully you'll be convinced to get involved. This is a key part of the story. We're really, hoping that you'll become part of this sort of puzzle piece. I mean, the cornfield and the approach to the sunken road weren't even preserved 35 years ago. I mean, this battlefield is mostly being preserved due to people like you and the group around me right now in the last 3.5 decades. So we hope you'll continue to be part of that. We appreciate you watching. We have more videos to show you. Thanks for watching, and thank you for supporting battlefield preservation and education.